dear students. I am your IYS English teacher for class 10 and today is day 2 of week 7. So let's share today's topics, what we are going to learn today. Today's first topic is a poem, Beautiful Hands, on page number 36. And the second topic will be the first topic of your grammar portion, that is parts of speech. Beautiful hands. As you can see the cover pic of today's topic, these are the beautiful hands about which we are going to learn today. These are the beautiful hands according to the poetess of this poem, Beautiful Hands. So first let's have a look at the introduction of the poetess. This poem, Beautiful Hands, is written by Ellen M.H. Gates. Ellen M.H. Gates was born in 1835 in Torrington, Connecticut, USA. That means Ellen M.H. Gates was an American poetess. She died in 1920. She wrote religious songs, which are also called hymns, like The Home of the Soul and Eternity for well-known magazines. So dear students, this is the introduction of the poetess, which is important for the central idea and even it is important for the reference to context point of view. Okay, so let's move forward. This is page number 36 of your English textbook. And I'll first read out the whole poem and then I will explain stanza wise. So first I'll read out the whole poem for you. Just pay attention. You have to pay attention on the pronunciation of the words. So listen carefully. Such beautiful, beautiful hands. They are neither white nor small. And you, I know, would scarcely think that they were fair at all. I've looked on hands whose form and hue a sculptor's dream might be, yet are these aged wrinkled hands most beautiful to me. Such beautiful, beautiful hands, though heart were weary and sad, these patient hands kept toiling on that the children might be glad. I almost weep when looking back to childhood's distant day. I think how these hands rested not when mine were at their play. Such beautiful, beautiful hands, they are growing feeble now, and time and pain have left their mark on hand and heart and brow. Alas, alas, the nearing time, and the sad, sad day to me, when neath the daisies, out of sight, these hands must folded be. But oh, beyond the shadowy lands, where all is bright and fair, I know full well these dear old hands will palms of victory bear. When crystal streams through endless years flow over golden sands, and where the old are young again, I'll clasp my mother's hands. By Ellen M.H. Gates. So dear students, this was the reading and now I'll explain you stanza wise. So in the first stanza, the poetess Ellen M.H. Gates is praising her mother's hands. And why is she praising her mother's hands? She's praising her mother's hands for their spiritual beauty. She's saying that though these hands are neither fair nor small, fair means the color is not bright, the color is not light, they are dark in color and they are not small. Small means delicate. They are not delicate, they are very hard looking hands. And she is still praising these hands because the poetess thinks that someone will hardly ever imagine that these hands were beautiful once. The poet is saying that these hands are just normal looking hands with no beauty in them, but the poetess remembers her mother's hands were as beautiful as a sculptor's dream hands. That means her mother's hands were very beautiful when they were young, but now these hands have grown weak and feeble with, and they have lots of wrinkles on them, yet these hands are still very beautiful for her. So this was the explanation of the first stanza. And second stanza now. In the second stanza, the poetess is saying that when she recalls the memories of her childhood days. Here it is written, the second line, though the heart were weary and sad, these patient hands kept toiling on, that the children might be glad. And in the next verse, the poetess is saying, I almost weep when looking back to childhood's distant day. So the poetess is saying that whenever she recalls her childhood days, she remembers that how her mother's hands were always busy, though weary. In the second verse, the poetess is saying, though heart were weary and sad, even her mother's heart was very weary. Weary means tired and sad. But she still kept on working hard for her children, that her children might be glad. She worked hard to fulfill all the demands of her children, and she always tried to make her children happy, and those hands always worked hard so that her children might be glad. Might be glad means might be happy. And the poetess says that she almost weeps. Her eyes become teary when she recalls her mother's hands never rested when her children used to play. The children were very carefree, they were very relaxed of all the worries of the world, but her mother, she had to look at all the chores of the house and all the difficulties of the life, yet she used to work day and night to keep her children happy and satisfied. And the poetess says that being gloomy, sad and tired from the hardships of life, these hands never rested and kept working for her children. In the third stanza, the poetess says that such beautiful, beautiful hands, they are growing feeble now, and time and pain have left their mark on hand and heart and brow. Means the poetess is saying that the passage of time, the growing time, as the time passes on, her mother's hands have grown weak and feeble. Feeble means very weak. They are very delicate now. They are in a very delicate condition now because of the passage of the time, and time and pain have left their mark means there is a lot of effect of time and pain. That means the hard work that her mother has done, it has left its effect on the hands of her mother, on the heart of her mother, and on the brow. Brow means the forehead. Eyebrows and forehead, these all are very closely connected, so the poetess has used this word brow because of she has not used the actual word forehead, she has used the word brow. That means the effect of the passage of time, the difficulties of life have given an effect on the hands and heart and brow of her mother. So the poetess says that, alas, alas, the nearing time, and the sad, sad day to me, when neath the daisies out of sight, these hands must folded be. The poetess says that she's expressing her sorrow, and she's very sad to think that, and she becomes very sad when she thinks, when the thought strikes her mind that as these hands are growing weak and feeble day by day with the marks of passing time, and soon the day will come when these beautiful hands will be no more seen, because these beautiful hands would be folded and buried in the grave beneath the daisy flowers. The sad, sad day to me means the poetess is referring to the day when her mother will die. And as she is looking on the hands of towards the hands of her mother, she is feeling that her mother is going to leave her someday, and she will be buried. These beautiful hands will be buried in her grave, and they will be just beneath the daisy flowers, and she will not be able to see the hands of her mother anymore. Now coming towards the fourth stanza. But oh, beyond the shadowy lands, where all is bright and fair, I know full well these dear old hands will palms of victory bear. When crystal streams through endless years flow over golden sands, and where the old are young again, I'll clasp my mother's hands. In the fourth stanza, dear students, the poetess is saying that in the coming world, where everything would be just fair and beautiful, in that world where old people will become young, and there will be transparent rivers flowing over golden sands. In the in the stanza, it is written, when crystal streams through endless years, means there will be no time limit. There will be crystal streams. Crystal streams means uh, the water will be as clear as crystal, and those streams will flow over the golden sands, and where all old people will become young again. And the poetess is saying in the third verse of the last stanza, I know full well means she is sure that her mother's hands will bear the palms of victory. Palms of victory is a type of a reward which she will get for the hard work she has done in the world for her children, to keep her children happy. And the poetess is very sure that her mother will bear the palms of victory. She will get the rewards of her hard work in the heaven. The poetess is talking about heaven in the fourth stanza. And she is saying that where the crystal streams will be transparent as clear as crystal, and they will flow over the golden sands. There she is very sure, and she is very hopeful that there she will meet her mother and hold her hands very tightly in her own hands. Clasp means to hold something very tightly. That means the mother doesn't want to lose her mother's hands. She is very sad when she thinks about the hard work, how the beauty of her mother's hands disappeared, how the beauty of her mother's hands disappeared when she used to work in her young age for her children. She worked hard day and night. She never stopped. Her children used to play, but their mother, she used to work day and night to keep her children happy. And in the third stanza, the poetess is saying that she becomes sad when she thinks that her mother is going to leave her any time, and her hands will be no more seen by the poetess, and she becomes very sad. And then in the fourth stanza, the poetess is wishing to hold her mother's hands in the heaven, where she is very sure that her mother will get the good reward, will get the best rewards of her hard work which she has done for her children in the world. So, dear students, you might have understood the reason of why the poetess is saying that the hands are beautiful to her. And the word in the first sentence, sculptor, means in the first stanza, the word sculptor is a person who makes statues. Can you imagine any person who makes statues can make anything ugly? No, he will make everything in his statue very beautiful. So the poetess is referring her mother's hands beauty to the dream of any sculptor who makes statues. Okay, so dear students, this was the explanation of this poem. And now you're seeing some two pictures on your screen. The first picture is an example of fair, beautiful hands, which are a sculptor's dream. And the second picture is of the aged, wrinkled hands, but that are most beautiful to a child. A sculptor may not make such ugly hands in a statue. He will always make beautiful hands while he's making a statue, but when hands of mothers they become old and weak, they are still beautiful to her child. As the poetess says in the poem, that mother's hands are the symbol of love. Mother and child's love is unconditional, not confined to physical beauty. Confined means not limited, not restricted, just to physical beauty. That means a child will love his or her mother's hands if they are beautiful, and they will not love if they are not beautiful anymore. No, it's not that. It is unconditional love. She strives hard for the comfort of her children, so one should express his love before she goes away. Now, dear students, in the next slide, we're going to see the central idea of the poem. In this slide, you're just seeing the central idea, but it is very important to memorize the introduction of the poet or poetess to write the central idea. So I have given you the introduction of the poetess. So you must compile it whenever you write it. So this is the central idea of the poem. You can take a screenshot of it. In the poem Beautiful Hands, the poetess praises her mother's hands for their spiritual beauty. According to her, mother's hands are the symbol of love, sacrifice, labor, and affection for her children. Mothers keep on working for their children, and their hands become weak and wrinkled by the passage of time. Yet the poetess appreciates those hands as most beautiful to her. The poetess wishes to hold her mother's hands tightly in the heaven too. Now let's move towards next slide of words meanings. These are the words meanings. Dear students, please take a screenshot. Okay, let's move forward, dear students. These are the MCQs. You have to take a screenshot. Be quick. This is the fifth one. This is the fifth MCQ. Okay, so this was about beautiful hands. I hope you all have understood it. Now, we are moving towards the first topic of grammar portion, parts of speech. In traditional English grammar, parts of speech is a category of words that have similar grammatical properties. Similar grammatical properties means each part of speech has similar function. That means they show the relation of each other. They show the proper usage in a sentence. Parts of speech tell us how a word is used in a sentence. Parts of speech are very essential in English grammar because they tell us how a word is used in a sentence. Each part of speech has a specific function in a sentence. And dear students, I have a story for you. There is a grammar family whose surname is grammar. There is a couple, Mr. Noun and Mrs. Verb. The couple has 3 children, a son pronoun and 2 daughters, adverb and adjective. The son pronoun has to do all the work of his father in his father's absence. The 2 daughters love each other, but there is difference in them. Adjective loves her father and brother and keeps praising them. Adverb loves her mother more and she always modifies her when there is a need. There are 2 servants in the family, preposition and conjunction. The preposition is the chief servant. He is the official servant of his master, Mr. Noun. Conjunction is the family servant and looks after every member of the family. And the interjection joins the family in times of joy and sorrow. So dear students, now you can see there are 8 different words in 8 different colors. And I want you to count. Yes, you are right. There are 8 different words in different colors and all these words are the parts of speech. As you all know that these are the parts of speech, let's know the function of each of them. Noun is a naming word. Pronoun replaces a noun. Adjective describes something. Verb is an action or state. Adverb describes a verb. Preposition shows a relationship. Conjunction joins words or clauses. And interjection expresses emotions. So dear students, noun is a naming word and a noun is used to name things, persons, animals, place, and idea. For example, table. Table is a thing, a name of a thing, so the word table is a noun. Other examples of things are table, car, strawberry, mountain. Persons, Sara, Ali, Bilal, Mateen. These are all the examples of nouns. Animals, dogs, cat, duck, elephant. For places, London, Egypt, California, Paris. Happiness, hope, love, freedom. And some example sentences, Ali lives in Sydney. So in this sentence, Ali and Sydney are nouns because Ali is the name of a person and Sydney is the place of a noun. In the same way, the second sentence, Mary uses a blue pen to write letters. Mary, pen and letters are all nouns of the sentence. Pronoun. A pronoun is used in place of a noun or a noun phrase to avoid repetition. Some examples of pronoun are I, you, it, we, us, them, and those. These are some examples because there are different types of pronouns and they are used in different purposes. Mary is tired. She wants to sleep. In this picture, you can see 2 sentences. Mary is tired. Mary wants to sleep. If we write this way, it will be very wrong. It will be a wrong construction because we don't need to repeat the same noun again and again. So instead of this noun, we have used the pronoun she. Like in this sentence, Mary is tired. She wants to sleep. So to avoid the repetition of Mary, the pronoun she is used to avoid the repetition of the noun. In the same way, there are some possessive pronouns which are used to avoid repetition. For example, this bike is my bike. So to avoid the repetition of my bike, we are using here the possessive pronoun mine. The next part of speech is adjective. Adjective describes, modifies, or gives more information about a noun or a pronoun. Means the adjective describes the qualities of a noun. For example, cold, happy, young, and a sentence, the little girl has a pink hat. Whenever we use adjectives to define noun, the adjectives come before the noun because they are defining, they are describing the noun. That is why we never write the girl little has a hat pink. This will be a wrong construction. So dear students, please be careful about this in the future. Some other sentences of adjectives are, the little girl has a pink hat and my sister is intelligent and fun. So the words intelligent and fun are describing the qualities of my sister. The next parts of speech is verb. Verb shows an action or a state of being. It can show what someone or something is doing. Go, speaking, ate, lived, been, is. These are all verbs when used in a sentence because they show the action. For example, I watch Woodward English videos. I study their charts and play their games. So in these two sentences, watch, study, and play. These are all verbs because they are showing the actions of some person, whatever the person is doing. Now in the next picture, you see state of being or existence. The word shows state of being or existence, like I am happy and I feel sick. In these sentences, there are no actions, but there are these two words, am and feel. They are showing the state of being or state of existence, means something is there. We can also call them be verbs. Next part of speech is adverb. An adverb modifies a verb, an adjective or another adverb. It tells how often, where, and when. Means an adverb describes how an action is done, where an action is done, when an action is done. Some examples of adverb are slowly, very, always, well, and true. For example, I am speaking slowly. How am I speaking? I am speaking, but how? I am speaking slowly. I ate my lunch yesterday. I ate my lunch quickly. I ate my lunch when? Yesterday, the day before today. And how I ate my lunch quickly. So these two words are adverbs because the first word is saying when and the last word quickly is saying how I ate my lunch. The most common types of adverbs are adverbs of manner, in which slowly, loudly, easily, etc. these words come. And adverbs of manner are those adverbs which give the question how any verb is done. Adverb of frequency tell how often a verb is done, means always, usually, never, every day. These are all adverbs of frequency. The next adverb is adverbs of place. Here, there, outside, above, inside, outside. These are all adverbs of uh, place, which give the question where the action is done, which give the answer of the question where the action is done. Now the next is adverbs of time. Yesterday, now, soon. So these are the adverbs of time which give the answer when the action is done. Okay, so dear students, let's move forward. The next part of speech is preposition. Preposition shows the relationship of a noun phrase, or a pronoun to another word. For example, some examples of preposition are at, on, in, from, with, about. The list is very long. This is just to give you a hint of what is preposition. These are the examples given. The sentence, I left my keys on the table for you. So the words on and for are the prepositions here because these words are showing the relation of the keys to the word I. Why have been the keys left on the table? For you. The next sentence, my birthday is in January. So in is showing the relation of the birthday with the month. The last part of speech is interjection. A word or phrase that expresses a strong feeling or emotion. It is a short exclamation, means an exclamation. How we exclaim any word is called an interjection. For examples, ouch, hey, wow, ah. The first sentence, ouch, I just hit my thumb. So in the first sentence, you're getting an expression of some pain. So it is an interjection. Wow, I passed my English exam. This is giving an expression of happiness, of some surprise. So these type of expressions are called interjection in English grammar. Now, dear students, I'm going to share with you some example of a sentence which has all 8 parts of speech in it. We are putting it together. We have put it together, and I have made a sentence. The boy kicked his bouncy big ball past a defender, but in his haste, he stumbled down. Oops. So all the red words, the boy, ball, defender, and haste, these are nouns. The pink words kicked and stumbled, these are verbs. His, and he, the words in green, these are pronouns. Bouncy and big, these are adjectives. Past, in, and down, these are prepositions. And the word in blue is interjection. And the remaining words, the, a, these are articles. And the comma and the full stop, these belong to the family of punctuation. These we are going to study later on. So dear students, I hope you all have understood the use of parts of speech in English grammar. If you use all the parts of speech correctly, accurately, your sentence will be complete, and it will be incomplete, it will be incorrect without the correct usage of parts of speech. So dear students, now I have the next slide of your home task. You have to complete the words meanings, the textual question answers and MCQs in English fair copy. And you also have to write 3 sentences for each part of speech, like 3 sentences for noun, 3 sentences for prepositions, 3 sentences for adjectives, using adjectives. That will be your task. And you have to write 2 sentences, just 2 sentences having all 8 parts of speech in it, like this one. It must contain all 8 parts of speech in it. They may have articles and punctuation marks. You must take a screenshot of your home task slide so that you can easily, conveniently complete your home task. Beautiful hands and parts of speech. So dear students, that was all from today's class. I hope you all have understood, and try to complete your work for your own convenience so that you can learn properly and prepare for your online assessment test. Take care. Allah Hafiz.